We've all watched and love science fiction movies like Star Wars and Star Trek. We love to see our favorite characters cruise around the galaxy on huge spaceships like the Star Destroyers. But have you ever wondered, how do those people manage to survive in space when there's no gravity out there? How do they prance and stroll around in a spaceship or a space station when they should be floating in midair instead? Well, that's exactly what Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX, thought too, until he actually came up with a solution for this age-old space dilemma. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about SpaceX's anti-gravity space station. So, don't go anywhere because you don't want to miss out on how SpaceX has created artificial gravity for astronauts' comfort in space. Now, let's begin. The thing about science fiction is that it is just that, fiction. It isn't grounded in reality, and it sure doesn't consider practicality. Sure, we like to see space princesses taking down stormtroopers on an Imperial Star Destroyer, but do we give much thought to how she's even doing that? I mean, there's a distinct lack of gravity in space, guys. No one can even walk upright there, much less battle the stormtroopers. So, of course we like our sci-fi tropes, but they aren't exactly the reflection of truth, are they? Artificial gravity is a thing in science fiction, but, unfortunately for us, it doesn't exist in real life. It is this fascinating phenomenon of artificial gravity that has sparked the imagination of many scientists and engineers. But turning such fanciful dreams into reality has always been a Sisyphean task, even for space agencies like NASA. But this is where SpaceX makes its dramatic and much-needed entry. SpaceX is the brainchild of Elon Musk, and in recent years, it has revolutionized the spaceflights industry. The world's richest man has always been interested in space exploration. For now, he's set his heart on the Red Planet for a self-sustaining human outpost there. The SpaceX founder and CEO has a very strong opinion about space travel and making humans go galactic for good. He says, the future of humanity is going to bifurcate in two directions. Either it's going to become multiplanetary, or it's going to remain confined to one planet, and eventually there's going to be an extinction event. So, what has SpaceX done to prevent such a disastrous fate for humans? Well, recently, it has come up with a brilliant solution to overcome the lack of gravity in space by creating the almost mythic artificial gravity. Since we're all very familiar with Elon Musk's role in the creation of many scientific marvels, like reusable rockets, spaceships, spacesuits, and so on, so it's only understandable that when it comes to artificial gravity, Musk is right in the center of its conception. Okay, so now you might be wondering, why do I keep harping on about gravity and artificial gravity? Well, simple. Human survival depends on gravity. We'll talk about that later, but let's understand what gravity is first. I mean, it may sound silly, but we're trying to be very thorough here, guys. You need to know what it is and why it's so significant when it comes to the success of space travel. Okay, so what is gravity? Gravity is the fundamental and universal force of attraction that pulls objects close to each other. Any object having even the slightest mass will be attracted to another mass. Anything that has mass will also have gravity, and with mammoth objects like planets, this gravity is incredibly strong. Now, Earth is one such giant object with a lot of gravity to match. But when you move away from this center of mass, like the Earth, the pull of gravity weakens, until it is rendered completely useless once you're out of its force of attraction. This is what happens to astronauts who leave Earth's orbit and start to float around like helium balloons in space. That sounds pretty crappy, right? All your life, you're used to walking around on solid ground, but in space, you're scattered like specks of dust because gravity is non-existent in space. Even on the moon, you can barely touch the surface before you're bouncing off. Mars is even worse since it has around 40% of Earth's own gravitational strength. This poses a lot of problems for NASA and SpaceX crew that may leave the Earth, only to find themselves drifting uselessly in space. Of course, it sounds kinda fun. Like, you can just float and drift in a spaceship with minimum effort on your part. But the truth is far from it. Gravity is an essential requirement for humans. Increased exposure to weightlessness can cause muscle atrophy, loss of bones, muscles, fluids, and a plethora of visual and cardiovascular problems. Gravity gives shape to our body, and without it, we may as well be mounds of jello. Doesn't exactly sound like a walk in the park, does it? But when you combine all these detrimental effects of the lack of gravity with the consequences of returning to gravity, well, it really does a number on you for sure. Like, imagine that after weeks of just floating around in a spaceship for weeks on end, you get to Mars, and you can't even stand up on your own 2 feet. God forbid you get sick there due to this, you won't even have an ER to go to. And when you consider extreme cases, astronauts can literally die when they experience normal gravity again. The abrupt change in pressure will cause bones and muscles to break down, and the blood vessels will simply burst. Even when the astronauts arrive at the red planet, they will be too weakened and atrophied after months of weightlessness. No way they're getting any research work done in that state. So, yeah, gravity sure is a double-edged sword. Even seasoned astronauts like Scott Kelly, who is pro at living in space, had a hard time adjusting to gravity when he came back. The man can hardly walk on his own after his space excursion. So, this is what Elon Musk and SpaceX want to resolve as soon as possible. They plan to create artificial gravity for the adventurous astronauts so they can have the ease and comfort of their lives back home on Earth. After all, the genius billionaire is planning to send many people into the deep reaches of space on voyages that will last for months on end, where lack of gravity will be the biggest problem. Now, how will they do this? Currently, SpaceX hasn't really incorporated the idea of artificial gravity because, let's face it, it still seems very sci-fi. But a few months ago, a fan inquired about the possibility of tethering another Starship to a launch in order to create artificial gravity. Musk affirmed that with a simple yes, which opens up a myriad of possibilities for us to delve through. Let me explain artificial gravity first before we get to the more technical stuff. Alright, so what is artificial gravity? Artificial gravity is the generation of inertial force via rotation. This force acts in place of gravitational force by manifesting centrifugal force in a rotational framework. This may sound like a lot of technical jargon, so let me break it down for you. Picture a spinning carnival ride. This classic rotor ride will create centrifugal force that will push people to its interior. So, similar to that, if we build a spinning ship, it will also act on the same principle by pressing the crew to the interior of the ship, hence mimicking gravity wonderfully. Some futuristic space vessels are constructed like a huge rotating wheel. This unique configuration is popularly termed the von Braun wheel. Now, it's a concept for a special space station that would create artificial gravity for astronauts and other common passengers, by creating a centrifugal force that pulls them to the vessel's interior due to the giant spinning spaceship. So, you can imagine that this would lend the astronauts a normal gravitational experience. So, even in the cold, distant regions of space, they'll feel right at home. And here, we should talk about how tethering can aid SpaceX in creating an accurate simulation of gravity. So, let's say that if two starships are tethered to each other, and then they start to spin around the center of this tether. This will literally create a rotating von Braun wheel. And, like I said before, this spinning would essentially provide the centrifugal force needed to keep astronauts firmly on the floor of the spaceship. So, SpaceX is doing something really momentous here by allowing space voyagers to feel gravity where there is none to be found. Even when the two spaceships are tethered around their mated tails, this will cause a rotational wheel and generate centrifugal force once more. Oh, and do you guys know the best part of SpaceX's efforts? They can tweak the specifics of the spaceship in such a way that those aboard can experience the same amount of gravity that they'll experience once they land on Mars. Literally a simulation like in VR games. Is that cool and mind-blowing or what? Okay, so everyone in the scientific community admits that it's the Starship that will be the first one to fully create, integrate, and deliver artificial gravity. I mean, this is the flagship of SpaceX we're talking about, so of course it's gonna deliver on all of its promises. But artificial gravity is something so elusive and theoretical that even NASA has shied away from it. Even now, SpaceX and its founder, Elon Musk, are still testing tentatively to see if the idea will float or not. Creating artificial gravity by essentially forming von Braun wheels up there in space will require tons of resources, and the cost will be humongous too. But if SpaceX manages to tether 2 starships successfully, it will be our first stepping stone towards providing a safe and comfortable space experience to space crews. This space station in the future is a pretty impressive invention by Elon Musk, but this is not the only invention by him that's coming out in the near future. So, what are the other inventions? See this video right here. Click this and you will get that question answered. Alright folks, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Do you think that the creation of artificial gravity space stations is possible? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, peace out.